It's a beautiful bacon day, Cookie Crusaders. Today I want to be covering Dark Cacao cookie with you guys. Now, obviously, the level of star you have them, the actual level of the cookie, and the powders that you have for his skill increased will greatly depend on how strong and how viable he is for your team. But I will say, overall, he is a strong cookie. And so, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be using Scroll, Lollipop, and Remedy. Just because in my tests, these three treasures gave him the most overall power as a single cookie. It'll be different in different teams, of course. If you build a whole different team setup where Dark Cacao is just bait or the front tank for healing purposes, for time in your back end, there's many different ways to set up the teams. So I can't recommend one specific treasure setup for him because it does depend on how you build your team. But what I can say is just for him alone, these three treasures currently deal out the most damage. Now, as far as the toppings, I run apple jelly on Dark Cacao. Biggest reason, though, I have the Monument at level 20 of 20 for the critical damage increase, and I have the lab upgrades at 6 out of 10 for the damage increase as well. So those are going to make the biggest difference. If you don't have those, searing toppings will be the strongest option as far as damage output, and chocolate and almond toppings will be your options if you just want survivability and his skill activations. So that is why I'm running apple jelly specifically. And as you can see here, 51% before the set bonus, so 56% critical plus my monument of 13%. So it's actually almost 80% critical chance that he will hit every single time. In addition, a 19% damage resistance, and then a few substats scattered here and there. But what I do plan to go for, my ultimate goal for Dark Cacao, at least when I can get the best of the best on him, I want to get a maximum critical percentage at 69%, which will be over 90% with the monument that I have. I want to have damage resistance at 30%, so that his ability to survive as long as possible is as high as possible. And then I want attack percentage at 15%. That way he is hitting as hard and as strong as possible no matter what. And his overall effects are going to be just absolutely annihilating the field. As he's been called before, and I will agree, he is probably the king of debuffs as of currently. So without further ado, I'm just going to run through a few teams and show you his ability to handle different style teams just on himself and how he goes through. Now, the Remedy, the big reason it's a helpful treasure is because it's got that healing factor. So if you can survive long enough in certain battles, then obviously you will get that to go off, just like we do here. And the Lollipop gives critical percentages and attack buff power. So you can see that we've done a huge amount of damage against the opposing team. I mean, a 1 versus 5, that's hard enough on its own. But 2 million damage without any other cookies aiding him, without buffing him, without pomegranate or eclairs buffs, without the heals or the buffs from cotton or things like that. 2 million damage. Absolutely throwing out huge numbers just on his own. Now, when we go into some other higher teams that will have cookies that will take me out much faster, instead of Remedy, we will just switch to the Feather because we will die fast enough where I want you to at least see 2 skill activations at the very least. So we're going to get through for the first hit. First skill activation goes. Take at least almost 20% of their health bar. We get the Feather and we hit again, knocking them down to about 70%. And so great damage, really great damage. And that is coming off of the critical toppings. And I'll show you the differences. I will move to the searing toppings after just to show you. But in that battle, fighting a higher level team, a harder team, that is a current meta team too, we still did 1.2 million damage. Now if we move over to that same team, but use searing toppings, which we have 48% attack, a 5.7% critical, so we still have a 22% chance to do critical damage, and 5.1% damage resistance. with a almost 7% cooldown. So that means our skills should be going off faster than they do on the critical toppings. In theory, you would think, traditionally, that the Syrian toppings would do more. But those monuments and those lab upgrades really bridge the gap of how strong the critical damage can do. As you can see, our lack of damage resistance means that we're going to die faster, of course. So it's going to skew the odds a little bit for that reason. But you can still see 2 full skill activations here. And we still lasted almost the exact same amount of time. So we did 1.2 million here as well. So we're almost on par. But the thing is, on the critical toppings, we only have 1.8% attack increase. So we do have the ability to grow much bigger on the attack increase of the critical toppings than we do on the critical percents on the attack toppings. Because here's the thing, with the monument, we have a 1 in 4 chance of getting a critical attack with Syrian toppings as it is. We already have a high chance of getting a critical hit on regular attacks and skills. With the critical toppings, we have a nearly guaranteed chance of hitting a critical hit. So once we buff the power, whether it be through monument or teammates, we will be doing more damage for that reason alone. So let's add just some people to buff to show some differences too. We'll take Eclair and we will take Pomegranate. And what we will do is we will show you what that looks like. So we will get the buffs from Pomegranate. Then we should get ones from Eclair. And now Dark Cacao will hit. And then Feather's not going to go to Dark Cacao because he is not the first to die. But that is okay. And so our results here for 20 seconds, we do 469,000 damage. So we had less time, and more of our treasure was focused on Eclair instead. So therefore we didn't get the buffs on Dark Cacao. So you can see the team building really makes the difference of how that plays out. Because now, if we go over to the attack toppings, and we try that, we get the Lollipop activation, which goes on Dark Cacao. We get the Feather, which is going to go to Eclair. And then we're done. And that's it. 16 seconds, even less time this time. But this time, more damage from Dark Cacao because the Lollipop was focused on him because of how the Lollipop works. So now if we move to another treasure, let's say we take the Flamingo, just to give Dark Cacao the highest health possible, so longest survivability. And we'll start with Syrian toppings this time. We'll give him the chance to just do as much damage as possible as long as possible. So we'll get those buffs. We'll get the attack increase. Hopefully we'll hit a critical because of the small critical percents we have. 13-second battle, 680,000 for Dark Cacao. And that's because a Lollipop didn't get to buff anybody in specific. We keep the same treasures. We move to the critical toppings instead. And now we go ahead and we get that buff. We get the weakness on the enemy team. We get our skill activation from Dark Cacao. The Feather has been used. We do not get a second skill activation from Dark Cacao. And then this time, 20 seconds, and Eclair's getting most of the damage. So Eclair's taking it here in the aspect of how like high damage and everything. So most of the buffs are going in Eclair's favor. And if you look here, I'm also running Eclair on critical toppings. So it's not that I'm running something different that's making it in that favor for Eclair that's taking away from Dark Cacao, because Dark Cacao really is the focus here. But I moved to Syrian toppings on Eclair just to show the differences. Because you're probably like, well, Eclair looks like he's doing way better than Dark Cacao. That's because Eclair's getting the Feather and getting a second skill activation. So that's 100% giving him the absolute advantage in damage over Dark Cacao. And so we move to Searing. Notice how we have less. We have 1.1 million, where when we did critical toppings and the feather went on Eclair, then instead we got 1.4 million. So that's a 300,000 damage difference. That's a big difference in a lot of ways. So now if we change back, we'll put him on critical just to keep it fair. We'll make sure he's on critical. And instead of Flamingo Tube this time, what we're going to do is we're going to go for Scythe to make sure absolutely that criticals will hit without doubt. We're going to take out Pomegranate, and we're just going to run just Eclair and just Dark Cacao. And now, in theory, Dark Cacao should be the one doing the most damage, but what could happen, and what does happen, is because Eclair is squishier, the feather will activate on Eclair. And so that means Eclair will deal more damage, but not a lot more, still more. If we take away the feather, and instead we put something like the robes on for faster attack speed, that will give no chance to Eclair for increased survivability because no feather form, instantly gone. There's no reason why he should do more than Dark Cacao in this instance. And he doesn't. So Dark Cacao is the main focus here. I know Eclair took a little bit of the spotlight there, but still running critical toppings. So that's still what my point is that the critical toppings on the right cookies can get a much better result if you have the lab upgrades and if you have the monument upgrade. Definitely think on it, see if you can make those upgrades, see if you can amass those toppings. It's something that I think you'll find very fun. And I wish I could go through an entire run of Alliance with you just to show you the 20 to 40 million damage that Dark Cacao does through an entire run through if he's in your main team. It's super cool. Let me know your feedback on Dark Cacao, your thoughts, how you specifically run him. Maybe you run him off cooldown. Maybe you run him caramel toppings with full attack speed. I don't know. I'd love to hear it. Either way, give me your feedback and we can discuss it further. Thank you so much for stopping by. Have a great day.